crowd, but have a seat. Introduce myself. I'm Jeff Goddard. I work for Tucker Sno-Cat out of the factory in Medford, Oregon. So I'm a sales representative for them, as well as in the past I've actually was mechanic in the shop, up into the service manager, parts manager, and warranty, and kind of been through one end to the other. Well-rounded, I guess. Started in '04 for them. So Tucker Sno-Cat's been around for a long time, 70 years this year, and been in Medford since 42, I think is when we started up. And it's a family-run company still today. There's about 50 of us there on the shop floor, an office, engineering. Actually, we got an engineer with us today. Sheldon came along. Sheldon works out of our engineering department. And we thought it'd be good for him to come out and kind of see what we're doing, and just not just the machines, but also along with us, we've got the guys from GetSno.
My name is Matt. I'm the service tech at GetSno, as well as demonstrator and do the shows. And before that, I was a heavy equipment mechanic on the roads. A little bit of equipment background.
Yeah. So, our main objective today, I guess they wanted us to do some 4-track maintenance, and I put on maintenance courses at home, and some of these could be 2 days, 3 days long, and to try to bring it all into 1 hour is going to be interesting. I've got PowerPoints that are much longer, and I'll have everybody asleep, I imagine, by the time. So we're going to break it down and just do some basic, just some basic routine maintenance, and just actually the functions of the machine and from end to end. So kind of give you guys an idea of the Sno-Cat. Are you guys the interest here? Or do you run Tuckers, or do you have? Yeah, right. So we got some operators, and do you do typically your own maintenance as well? Yeah. So, and that's the nice thing of our machines, is we're a functional, user-friendly and maintenance-friendly machine. Common parts that you can go down into standard automotive shops and get many components of our machine. Not everything. There are some proprietary components, but our engine plants, we run Cummins QSB motors, and currently we're actually going through some changes, and we've actually just gone into the next tier status. To my knowledge right now, we're the only manufacturer that's gone into the tier 4. We actually have a machine built today on our shop floor that's gone through the full prototype stages and approved for tier 4I or interim. So your pickups, let's say like an 08, 09, and 10 Ford pickup, had a DPF filter. That's a downstream particulate filter that cleaned the exhaust and regenerates. And so our Sno-Cat for 2013, model 2000, with 173 horse motor, all the way up to 300 horse, is going to have that DPF filter, tier 4 emission. So we've gone through the stages and testing all the certifications, and it will be the new tier of motor, all the way up until tier 4 final, which is going to be the urea injection. So that's something that's been a lot of question. We've heard it a lot this week, and so we can produce 2013 machines with current motors and new production motors. So the only other option you would have is if you were big, you would stockpile last year's model motors and then put those out, but not in current year models. So, but we do run the QSB Cummins engine power plant, on the typical routine maintenance, I'll try to get through some of this stuff, and hopefully it's not too redundant. But the QSB engines, we run 2 different series. We run the 4.5 6-cylinder, and then the 6.7 6-cylinder. So on that engine, the 4-cylinder, like would be in the 1000 out here. It has 2 different horsepower packages, a 130 and a 160. And then the motor that's in the 2000 is actually a 173 all the way up to that, like I said, 300 horse. And so So the typical filtration, we try to keep things as user friendly and easy to get to. Fleet guard filtration. We recommend our filters to be checked for restrictions, obviously daily, but 250 hours or 3 months, whichever comes first. Filters are interesting. Most people think on an air filter in a Sno-Cat, if you're in the snow, you're not going to get a lot of dirt and debris, but very fine dust, and we'll see a lot of it. You'll get a real fine powder, fine dust that comes off the, maybe when you're just moving and eroding it, or what have you. So filter is something to inspect, the dirt trap, inspect it daily. And then, obviously at daily inspections, we do recommend, checking oil levels daily, the 250 hours for 3 months on the oil, but most cases, most outfits are going to change an annual oil change on their unit. Slip through some of these. On tier 3 stuff, so like which out here, we put a restriction gauge that's easy to get to. So when you're doing the daily inspection, open the engine compartment, it's going to be right in your line of sight. There'll be an air restriction gauge that's right there, and it's a pretty simple gauge to read. It's telling you if you've got impacted filter. On the intake end of our units, we've got a large grid or grate. It's got we actually built this aluminum cover, and that's where there's cold air intake in between the engine compartment and the cab. Check that for a daily inspection, looking at for needles, debris gets packed into that because it's a pretty large airflow through there. So you make sure that's clear of any debris. Obviously our filters right on the engine block. That's a typical engine or oil filter. And then on your coolant, we do recommend to check your coolant level daily. You've got a standard recovery bottle. But the thing that's missed a lot is checking at the cap on the radiator itself. What happens is you get a crimped line or a crimped line between your recovery bottle and the cap. You can have a cavitation in there, so you could have a radiator that's dropping and level, and then your recovery bottle shows that it's got fluid in it. You guys seen that in your shop before? You get a pinch line or get a
No, I haven't.
Once in a blue moon will happen, but it's a bad deal because you get a leak in a radiator or something, and it draws it down. So, and then antifreeze on our units, we check the antifreeze every it's actually 500 hours, or what I would recommend is a strip. Check that strip annually. 2 years replacement, and then up to 500 hours. You could have if you wanted a recharge. Some folks actually go in and have a recharge their antifreeze. At the factory, we change the fluid every other season. We actually drop it and change it every other season. So,
that strip that he's talking about is it's a kit you buy like at Napa. Maybe you guys haven't seen them. It's just a strip that you stick it in the antifreeze and you pull it out. There's like 5 bars.
Yeah.
They change color, and then on the bottle that tells you whether your acidity's high or low, and some other things.
Yeah.
And
that's important to keep up on that, because electrolysis on diesel applications can be a nasty thing. So we do, and every other season we do recommend to change your antifreeze. On fuel filter filtration, it's been a big subject the last since tier 3 when we went into the high pressure systems. And fuel can be it's probably been the most issues as far as engine failure that we ran into from different climates to different bulk sources. Can you guys hear me all right? Yeah. So the bulk, fuel from a bulk source, typically you're gonna, if you've got, I don't know about fuel, but most outfits get fuel at one location and you guys have a bulk cell or what have you. Where we run into the most trouble is problematic is moisture in the fuel. And you know, the older motors, the old Bosch pumps, the older diesels, they were a little more resistant to gelling, you know, contaminants. I think they would run, you could run, you know, contaminants through the system. I think that with less issues. Now today, our engines have such high fuel pressure, 20,000 psi in the emulsifier tube on top of the on the engine. They're massive fuel pressure, and if you've got a restriction at all between any one of these filters, you're going to have a code, a D rate, and the engine's going to slowly work and shut down. So I probably had a dozen, you know, warranty calls from different clubs in the last 3 years that had fuel-related issues. And typically, it came back to a fuel supply problem, and it's fuel. It's really the root of it is the fuel. So I guess my recommendation is make sure to know where you get your fuel as a common source, that you're filtering your fuel at your plant or wherever your bulk tank is. Make sure it's filtered fuel going into your machine. Just kind of, it's something it's seemed to be a bigger issue in the last few years. Any moisture just creates a lot of trouble. The way our filtration system works, we've got the filter on the right. This filter is the FS 20022. It's got a lubricity puck in the bottom of the filter. It's got 12 volts going to it with a heater. We preheat this fuel. It's lubricated, and then it drops into the secondary filter, which is then entering the engine. That's a 3-micron filter. It's very, very fine, and any contaminants, it's going to gel up the system or cause a restriction. So the filter, this 20,022 filter is a 500 hours, or 6 months, and the same on the other filters. So my recommendation on those filters, obviously, you don't want to, if you change those filters in the spring, they sit all summer, and then you go to work with them, you just basically have the filters sit around for no reason. So change them out annually, change them out pre-season. As you go into the season, you're going to have fresh filters that will run you clear through the winter months, and then do a change out again before the pre-season. So, yes?
The filters you said that was heated. You have an older model, did you get a heated filter for it?
You could adapt it depends on how old the model.
Either on.
Yeah, so it has is that a gas motor or diesel?
Diesel.
The diesel. You could put an FS 20,000 on a 22. There would be some benefits as far as the lubricity goes.
Yeah.
And that head could be purchased, actually, the whole unit could be through your dealer or through Cummins, because Fleetguard is owned by Cummins. There's one application that they made, our Cummins at home actually made a special spud that filter threads onto, so it adapts the heater unit and the mount. But there would be benefit to running a lubricity, just because the fuels are so dry today. But that older style Bosch pump then is pretty tough. So
Thanks.
Once we went to QSB engines, we've got computers on all these motors as well as the transmission, so that the Cummins motor's got an ECU, engine control module, that's mounted right on the side of the block. Always be aware of when welding any around the unit on the plow mount or a frame part to disconnect. There's a pair of Allens that are right in the center. Disconnect these Allens and get that unit disconnected from the block. A back, charge or a shock to that. It's like a $2,500 component, and it will last the life of the vehicle. They'll last a long time, but weld shock is not a good thing. So disconnect that whenever welding. Engine block heater. We run the block heater standard on all our units, so they're a 110 or 120 block heater, and we run those same block heaters. This PowerPoint doesn't show it on the transmission, the engine block, and the hydraulics as well. So it's a triple plug. Just plug in and it preheats. So it's a great if you've got power at, you know, at the source of your shed, definitely plug your units in. On our drivetrain, you know, Tucker Sno-Cat is built from you know, an automotive style drivetrain. So our differentials, front and rear, a Dana Spicer differential, and we have a couple different options. We can, you know, do the 70 HD differential or an 80. And this year, actually, we're going to go more into the 80s as a standard for our units. The transfer case is a Tucker built transfer case on some of our units, and now we've got a new generation transfer case coming out that's actually a Cushman built, some really heavy duty 4-gear transfer case. So, you know, running drive lines, differentials, track frames, and carrier frames. So it's much like a pickup is, just with little different wheels and tires on it, you know, sprockets and tracks. So that it's kind of a basic configuration of our unit. Let's see what I've got here. On the transmission, dipstick, just pull daily inspection on the transmission. Change your transmission fluid every 500 hours for 12 months. Allison transmission has a dipstick that's kind of it's just a basic on it, but on a dipstick you've got a refill range, actually where these cross here where the hashes are. That refill actually can be used when off. Most automatic transmissions, everybody checks them obviously when they're in idle, in neutral. But this refill range actually is when after you get you drop the fluid, you can fill up to the refill range, and then this is the cold run band, this is the hot run band. So that first set of hash marks, actually you can use that after in the units in the off position, you can fill it up to that first set of hash marks. So most people didn't know that. I pulled that off of the Allison chart. Drain pan on the Allison transmissions, the standard drain. You do not want the pans off the transmissions. There's no reason to. On your older units, it's got maybe a 540 or a 545 in it. They've got an internal filter in those. And actually, you talk to Allison here lately, they're actually going to tell you if it's got an external filter, an HP1 spin on, you can leave the pan in place and not pull that filter. I was always originally under the mindset that we change those filters out during the annual change. But talking to Allison here just in the last couple months, they said, you know, there's more contaminants and issues with pans leaking and everything else. If it's got an external filter, you can change that out. I don't know, the older transmissions that got enough time on them, I think the filter change is not a bad idea on an internal. The new transmissions do not have a filter in them. They have a screen to just a fine wire screen, mesh screen, and that screen's just to be changed out during overhauls. So there's no reason to pull the pan on a newer unit. All you do is drop the fluid and the filter, which is an external filter right here, that's a spin on the filter. On that filter, there's a magnet on place on the filter itself. Make sure to take the magnet off and put it on your new filter. We get many of those machines in for our service shop. Those magnets have been thrown away. So that magnet, just to catch any fines, just kind of a FYI, you get the magnet back. We talked about transfer case a little bit. Our transfer case is a 4-gear or a 3-gear transfer case. Maybe on their older unit you have a 3-gear transfer case, being a 4-gear on the left. The 4-gear is a pump unit. It's got a gear-driven pump in 4 gears, and then this is a 3-gear case. We built this case here. Tucker Sno-Cat did we have the housings molded for us. We have all the gears built. We assemble it at our plant. This transfer case is an RJ Link transfer case, and they built those for a number of years, from 2002 all the way up to this last year. And now we've gone to a brand new unit. Nobody's got those yet. So next year, if we do this again, I'll bring up some new information. So,
Jeff?
Yes, sir.
Just a comment back on that transmission filter. Do we still have you should mention that aftermarket filters in that magnet?
Do we have on the aftermarket filter?
No, the comments these situations we ran into about using aftermarket filters.
Yeah.
And that magnet.
Okay.
About restricting the oil holes, like we should be careful to use with
Well, I've only seen one aftermarket filters that are available. Actually, you can get them from like Chevrolet or from a Napa. But the Napa, it had the same mold configuration. Did you see something was different?
So we did have a customer that put a filter on and that actually covered the whole road.
Yeah, well, that would not. That's a good point to bring up. I have not ran into that.
Filter.
Yeah, you know what brand filter that might have been?
Off the top of my head.
Yeah, well, that's definitely a good piece of information because I haven't ran into that. Yeah, definitely you wouldn't want any restrictions, so cause issues there. That's a $4,200 transmission, so you definitely don't want to burn that thing up. On our drive lines, we run a couple different styles of U-joints. On the older models, you would add just a standard cross like a Dana Spicer U-joint. And then all the later models, we went to a Rockwell cross, would be like in a big truck U-joint. So they're a bolt-on Rockwell U-joint. They're really heavy duty, and there was a large upgrade. The older style U-joints, like you see, they worked well in the older models because our machines got heavier and larger. We had to go to a much larger U-joint that had a lot more, that withstand a lot more load force. So the one thing to look at on your older model U-joints, if you do have those, so pull the caps, even though the U-joint looks like it's in good shape, you'll see when they get indentions, you start to wear on the spindle and bearings right. So U-joints are not that expensive. Typically what happens when a U-joint fails is you break drive lines, yokes, transmission components. I had a guy here 2 years ago break a input shaft U-joint and broke his transmission housing all the way back to his flex plate. So it really can cause a lot of trouble. A $45 U-joint, created about $4,500 in parts I think it ended up being. So greasing, grease is good, but excessive grease can create issues as well, especially on your older models that've got the fixed brake caliper. Over grease can get into your brakes and cause a lot of mucked up parts. So grease is good, but sometimes there is such a thing as over grease on certain components. But so the U-joints that we were referring to, that Rockwell, there's just a quick note on that. There's a 35 foot-pounds of torque on those. So when you are pulling those U-joints, check 35 foot-pounds of torque. Grease universal slip yokes every 25 hours. Inspect the torque on the universal joints on the end of every season. It depends on the hours you've got in that season. You could do that biannual or halfway through the season as well. If you get into 3, 4, 5, 600, 800 hours, and it depends on what you do for a season. I mean, there's kind of a variety. But the torque on the U-joints is something important. It's definitely for your spring maintenance or your summer type maintenance. I just can't stress that enough. Check U-joints, check for play, check for driveline issues, because there's just a lot of load force going through your drivelines and U-joints. And we try to keep all of our grease certs and everything in here, all lined up. But typical grease points through the U-joints and drivelines. So we've got each driveline is going to have a slip grease point and as well as a cert. And then this is the input drive shaft, actually the same style that the guy broke back in Oregon. It's just got a point grease input shaft. The differentials, check your fluid monthly, replace the fluid annually on your differentials. We do recommend to run a synthetic lubricant in your differentials. Typically, it's a 75-140 is the blend that they come out of the factory with. So pull the pan, inspect the differentials. When you do pull the pan, there's going to be a set of end caps. You want to torque those at 80 foot-pounds. And 80 foot-pounds on the torque, and then inspect your ring gear. You're not going to be able to inspect the entire differential internally because you can only see the components.
In the top of this, there's a vent, depending on how old your cat is. And actually, we've seen those plug a bunch lately. You get a little bit of grease pushes out of them, and then the dust collects, or dirt collects, or they actually had a couple freeze in the wintertime, and hub seals will start leaking.
Yes.
So that's something you want to clean.
Pushed out, so your outer hub seal ends up pushing the seal out.
So just take that, you take a blow gun and get underneath it, or even just give that cap a twist.
Yeah. The other thing you can do too is you can pull this vent out. That becomes a constant issue, and run an extension on a hose barb on that. Run it up and run an open line or a canister. We sell a small canister actually, where you can plug that, so it's a constant vent on both differentials. So a raised vent, and that would keep garbage out of it.
We raise them all.
Yeah, they're definitely, the raised vent's the way to go. Track system. So the track adjustment should be checked monthly or any time that the tracks look or hear as loose. The problem is with tracks is you get tracks too loose, they start jumping sprocket. It's much just like a snowmobile track, but you know, running them too tight is a big issue as well. So you know, track should be completely checked over at the end of each season for damage prior to restoring vehicles. Track should never be left parked on bare ground. Park the vehicle on pavement or plywood and cover the tracks to protect them from the sun. Damage, they're going to get UV damage just like any tire lid or rubber component. So cover them with cheap tarps or under, if you got storage, that's the best way to go. We actually sell a track cover. Track covers are really expensive. We have them custom built. You could buy a set of tarps really cheap and cover them, keep them out of the sun, keep them off, keep the UVs off of this. Tracks are not an inexpensive item. So as far as going into the carrier components, the end adjuster, this is how you adjust the track. You just have a simple adjustment. It's got a jam nut, and then these adjusters turn out or in, and that's what creates the tension. So that's a kind of a wearable item that sits out in the element. So the track tensioner is something that you want to grease, take care of. When you do pull the tracks, pull the tensioners off, clear off, grease them, clean them up, because they're in the elements all the time.
Hey Jeff, do you recommend your customers to back their track adjustment off in the spring?
There's nothing wrong with that. It wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't hurt. I would say most of the clubs probably do not do that. If you're running backing the tension off the track, he was asking if I'd recommend that. It would not hurt to take tension off. Anytime you got constant tension on something, you're creating, you know, unneeded wear. So that wouldn't be a bad idea at all. Most of the time, some outfits, I guess, if they were to do that, they're not going to. There's got to be a good communication there. If you can create issues, I guess. But so as far as tension and setting a track, the sag in a track, so the proper tension. You can read in your book in a manual on a modern machine. It's going to have two different ways of doing it. The originals would set 50 pounds torque on a long track. I think 40 pounds torque on a short track, or 175. That torque's fine in the perfect world when the end adjuster is free and doesn't have any dirt and grime and all the parts or the components are new. But as that machine gets some time on it, a season on it, that adjuster doesn't move like it did when it was originally. So truly the best way to set the tension is with the sag of your track. You know, so jack your unit up, jack that corner up, and sag the track. And that dimension is just a simple sag test of 5/8 of an inch on a 200, 3/4 of an inch on a 175. So it's the distance between the most center wheel, the center point of the track, and that middle wheel. So that's a simple adjustment. And you can make a feeler gauge if you want, or a block of wood or something, but it's a quick, easy adjustment. Greasing journals at the beginning and end of every season. A journal is a bushing. We'll have one here. That one. Yeah, it's a green sleeve or a green liner, and so that's a. I think on my next slide. So that green liner sits, so you're looking down on our carrier frame, there's a liner.
That's a piece that's cut. It's normally full width.
Inside this whole length, it's like 11 3/4 long, and it sits in this, there's a bushing in there. So the whole track frame's rotating on a green urethane, that bushing. And that bushing is a wearable component. What you'll see is you get a season, 3 seasons on the machine, you see where the carrier frame starts to walk and it becomes slightly loose. Well, those bushings need to be serviced, and those bushings can be replaced. They actually can be flipped and ran the opposite way because they're going to wear on 2 high sides. You guys do the same, right?
Oh, yeah.
You flip the journals over, and then I actually think you guys just push yours out.
Cut them, yeah.
Yeah. And
Put the wear part on the inside.
yeah, because you just got two. The way our carrier frame's designed, you've got a wear slot on the high upper, on the inside upper. It's gonna wear right here, it's gonna wear on the bottom, and it's just from the load of that carrier frame. So that journal will wear.
I would just like to say that's probably the biggest repair that we see that's preventable. People just do not grease them enough, or the journal will actually just kind of fill in its own hole, and you have to pull a grease fitting out and just run an 1/8 inch drill bit in there, because what happens is the grease goes between the journal and the carrier, not between the.
Yes, yeah. That's a high wear item. You think about how often does that thing pivot and rotate? It's constantly moving. And so just it's got 2 grease fittings, top and bottom. The grease fitting top and bottom. So it's a simple grease. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind. It's a spot I think that gets forgotten a lot. It's kind of up out of the way. It's not the cleanest place to be putting grease to it.
We use that stuff I'm passing around. It's a high impact grease, and it seems to hold up a lot better. It's very stiff.
Yeah, I think you use a standard like a Stay Lube or something like that. That grease is fine, but the higher end greases really do. They repel water better. They're better on this high wear point.
I think that's about $600 a corner to change by the time you do the labor. So it's $2,400 to go around your cat. You buy a lot of grease for $2,400.
Yeah. If you wipe the journal spitter out.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. That gets expensive. So those bushings are $100 bushing, basically. Maybe they're probably gone up on that, but maybe $130 for that green bushing. And it doesn't have to be replaced necessarily. It can be flipped and rotated. But once it's worn down, and the bushing's inexpensive compared to the steel components that it's working around it. So once you wear or wipe those components out, then they can get very expensive.
Can you tell before or do you have to pull it?
Well, what you would do is jack the vehicle up, and you can actually tell play in that carrier frame. You're going to see it. It's going to walk side to side, and but it really is on a high impact on a machine that's getting high mileage. It's almost an annual for us. If we do a teardown, we do a full service. That is something we get serviced annually. We pull the track frames off of them annually in grease. And that's when we do the bearings, and we kind of go through the whole thing. It's part of our annual service. You could probably, on a low hour unit, you could probably get away with it by a bi-yearly service. But most of the time we get a machine and it's 4, 5, 6 seasons old, and they're so sloppy. I mean, the tracks are. Once you get all the weight off of them, you can see that they've got a lot.
You'll almost see it if they're sitting on a level floor. You can almost see that they got pigeon toes.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And so the older machines back like your 88, that didn't have a green bushing in it, and no liner. It's a steel to steel. So that was an upgrade we did in like '97. But there's a fix for your older models is you can actually we've got some wrap, urethane wrap that's got a sticky adhesive to it, and you can actually coat those journals with steel bushings with that wrap, and that will make a bush too.
You have to do it a couple times before it carries back on.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, So hydraulic system, just kind of a quick on our hydraulic system. There's on our hydraulic tank, we've got 2 fill levels, and a low level, high level. This is basically a no-go point here. If you do not have fluid in this sight class, it needs to stop and get that back into this window. it's once this fluid's back into here, you're on a suction, and if it's dropped below, you're going to have a cavitation in the system. You're going to end up damaging hydraulic components. So the top level is a mid level, and then the hydraulic fluid we inspect it daily, replace your fluid annually, and then your filtration as well annually. On the main hydraulic filter, or primary filter, the big suction filter, we've got dual filtration on that. It sits up in the frame rail. And then valving, like on our new machine, you're going to have a BOAC style valve. It's electronic over hydraulic valve. It's something similar to what you'd have in an excavator. It's a BOAC valves, really great valves. We have very little issues, very little service and maintenance to them. Fittings and hoses is probably the main thing to check for leaks or inspection, but there's really very little maintenance. Inspect all your cylinders for damage, inspect your hoses for leaks and damage, inspect your pump and mounting hardware. Periodic inspection of hydraulic components is recommended. 100-hour inspection should be performed during the winter operation. So walk from end to end, look the machine over, look for obvious leaks and worn, chafed hoses under hydraulic. We run two different style pumps. This particular pump is a piston pump, a sour Danfoss piston pump. It's not to get too involved, it's a load sense system. So once your machine has a drop in pressure, this pump spools and turns on. It's got a swash plate in it. It turns on and feeds the system and brings up the system pressure. The really neat thing about it is when it's not being demanded or used, it goes to an idle or a static pressure. The older style pump that you would have in the older machines is going to be a vane pump that's on a constant demand, constant flow all the time. So it's going to be a big, a pressure of 2,000, 2,100 psi that's constantly from end to end on the machine. The new pumps today sit in idle, and they're up and down, so you have greater hose life, a lot less leaks. It's easier on packing kits, on your cylinders. It's a much tighter system.
Fuel economy
really helps. Yeah, it's a lot less load on the engine as well. So 100-hour inspection on steering related components. Make sure you're greasing. Each outfit does different as far as your grease. I've got some clubs at home in Oregon, they grease daily. The machine goes back and gets greased weekly, monthly. You guys kind of do the same. I don't know, everybody's got different programs, but how is it, I guess, just real quick, as far as greasing, do you think, are they greased daily, weekly? What's an average? First of the month. So you get a monthly grease. And then your season's typically 3 months long. So as a manufacturer, I say that's not enough grease. I would say that needs to be done at least twice a month. But I can't change your guys' program, but grease is cheap, and the wear and tear is much greater than I think daily is too often, and there's no reason to waste that, put that much grease to it. You've got an outfit that runs 15 or 20 hours a day when they run, and run 3 days a week. They're doing a major inspection and grease weekly. By the end of the week, or the beginning of the week, they're going through. Grease pushes out moisture. That moisture is what really seems to be the root of all evil. Because we're in the snow all the time, you get a lot of moisture and damage to the steering components, bearings. So, but I would say at least a bi-monthly would be my recommendation, depending on your hours. So the slide block clamp, 25 hours, and this is just to kind of go through some of our main grease points. Our machine pivots and steers on 3 positions on either one end or a single position on the other. So it's got a large urethane slide block, and those points need grease to allow the machine to slip. And you can use like a Lucas 5th wheel plate lube or something like that on there that'll help them slide easier. So we've got your standard grease points on all of our pivot points on our machine. 25 hours is what we're at. And then your pivot boss like on the trunnion pin. So our machine's trunnion on one end, and that's a real high wear item. It's something the machine's constantly working and pivoting on that. So 25 hours as well. The same way on the front fifth wheel plate, we've got a pivot point on that. The machine's constantly torquing, so it's a 25-hour grease point. Just a quick brief on our electrical system. We design and build all of our electrical harnesses. Tucker builds them at the factory and then has them mass produced if we've got a big run. We run a standard 12 volt, not 24 volt, 12 volt system, and typical solenoid panel, and then all our newer units have got battery master switches on them. So that seemed like something that our customers really liked, and so we just made it a standard this last year. So there's our typical truck style battery, 31P truck battery, and clean those terminals, inspect them. Beginning of the season for sure, to make sure that the terminals are clear, and just inspect your leads, your terminal leads. I think the major problem that we have is actually these leads that are going up to the solenoid panel, the flex of the machine, get loose lugs and loose terminal connections to the starter. So inspect those annually. Alternator, the 12-month inspection as well. Just check for connections and output. With our new gauges and everything, you can check that output right from the cap. As well as on the starter, checking your terminal ends or leads to your starter. Starters last a long time on the machines, many years out. Grid heat. All of our units on the older style Tier 2 to Tier 3 had intake grid style heaters. Went away from the glow plugs. The grid heat is a much more effective. The thing that will take is ether. Ether into a grid heat is you've got an explosion going right into the head of the engine. So do not use ether on the. We don't recommend it at all, but there's times when on an older unit where you've got a no fire issue. I've seen used it myself, but ether on a grid heat unit is not a good application. In the one that I do for a big utility ones, I've got a big fireball coming off of it, so it would be ugly. So daily checklist, check your engine oil, your coolant level, checking your hydraulic oil, check your transfer case fluid, transmission fluid, your brake fluid, your fuel level, visual inspect your air cleaner, visual inspect your tracks, visual inspect your wheels, and drain your fuel water separator. We recommend this for a daily inspection. Factory recommended daily. Does it happen with every club? Probably, I would say probably not. But we, as a demo operator, I do that with the crowd that I've got. It takes less than 5 minutes. Go around, check all your fluids, fire the machine up, get it up to a warm operating temperature, and off you go. So I had a situation this last year. A customer somewhat near to us went out in the field. He had been out for an hour and a half, and a call was made to us, and he was broke down, and he was back in the backcountry. So there was an outfit went out to help him. He had a broken component on the machine. As they started walking around inspecting, he was 7 quarts low on transmission fluid. He was a gallon low on hydraulic fluid. He had this, it was on this big list of all these things, and it was so preventable, and it caused a big issue, of course, because everybody's going, what are you doing before you're going out? But it's just safety and common, little common sense. But going out and putting yourself out in the elements, it can be dangerous, but also it's not doing anybody any favors. So that was, I would say that machine probably had been daily inspected the whole season. It probably ran the whole season. It's an older machine, and it's had a hard life, but there's no reason not to inspect those things before you go out in the field. Put yourself in harm's way. In the engine compartment, we've got some kind of graphic signage, but fans, you know, anytime the engine's running, stay away from the fans, stay away, keep clear. Because we've got large fans and you know, obviously. So this is an XL, but it's that we're kind of actually so we already hit that, and actually those slides got them. So there on that's it for my main PowerPoint. And like I said, I could get into bearing breakdowns and much more involved. I do invite we do a service maintenance course and you know, and I think our dealers are trying to do more of that too. I hope that as Tucker and our dealers that we can put more things like that together. I know that Tracking did that last year and had a service maintenance course that they kind of threw together for the customers. I think maintenance as a whole, the machines are simple to maintain. There's some basically common maintenance to them, but it just, I think, educating the end users and the operators, the folks that are maintaining the machines, I think that a little bit of education will go a long ways, and you know, it could be taken to the next level. So, have you guys put thought into that on your end?
Absolutely, and just to take that a bit further, for anyone who, any clubs at all, just get in touch with your rep, you know, the guys from Shop or Tracker or ourselves at GetSno. And if you have a couple of guys who want to do the maintenance program, let us know. It'd be our pleasure to get out there because, you know, no one wants to be broke down. And the best way is to keep everybody happy is to make sure that no one gets stuck and broke down. And to avoid that, preventive maintenance, as we know, is the most cost-effective way to do that. It would be our pleasure, but we'll certainly give you a hand and make sure that we can get the information so we can set up a maintenance, a groomer maintenance session near to you.
If you don't mind, I'd like to just add to that one the track did last year. I didn't get to go as scheduling conflict. I wish now I can. I went to that to move the other. We had several grant sponsors there that have been track owners, Tucker owners for years, and they gained immense knowledge. They still talk about how valuable, but not only the preventive maintenance, the guys showed ways to fix things that were common sense stuff that we never even thought of.
Yeah, because
I want you folks to know back home that Track did an excellent job.
Great.
Excellent.
Everybody.
Great to
Thank you for telling us that. Yeah, they do a good job out there.
You're going to say something?
And so much of this maintenance is kind of standard mechanical, automotive style mechanics, and that's the beauty of our machines. I feel is that we can go out there and work on them. But it just takes a little extra, you know, maintenance. The tracks, I think, are the most intimidating thing for most people is get the tracks off and work on the track system. But it is the highest wearing item on our machine. Think about tracks; they're in the elements all the time, you know. So they got extreme heat to then rapid cool down. So you've got all that condensation build up in the bearings and all the wearing items. And you know, bearings probably are the biggest. When we bring a machine into our shop, we do a full service to what we consider full service, and it's frame down, tear down. And the highest wearing item we would have would be a wheel bearing. Wheel bearings they get hot and cool down so fast that they gain a lot of moisture, and that's something that seems to be missed in the field often. And then when it is damaged and you do have troubles, it's a major issue because you're out and you lose wheels or. So there's a lot of that can be preventative maintenance that can be taken care of in the off season.
So you can put the bearing buddies on that, on the tracks?
Is that the bearing buddies that you have on trailers?
On the older style R&K style, the aluminum wheel, we've done the bearing buddies, and but we've had issues getting them knocked off and different things, but they do work well. The thing with a bearing buddy is you force grease through your outer bearing, you're not really servicing your inner bearing. So you'll find that the outer bearing's in real good shape, and the inner bearing's got a lot of moisture and pitting in it. So bearing buddies work well. I use them on my boats and stuff at home, and they work good. But that's not a fix-all for full service of that bearing. It does force grease through that, but it doesn't really effectively grease that inner bearing.
Any way to change that?
Or,
Huh?
Is there any way to change that?
Yeah, I can't do both sides of it.
Not really. I mean, the best way is to visually inspect the bearing. Because they've got time in life, then they'll get checking and start getting wear points, and change the bearings out, seals the bearings. But on the Terra style, it's got a wet hub and a different style bearing. So, but maybe someday you'll get one of those.
So I guess, brothers, now, we could just add one thing. One of the most important, one of the most important things about maintenance is, as we know, there's lots of things that need to be done every time you go out. And one of the big challenges we face quite often is we have multiple operators. And a simple checklist, just a simple checklist that maybe you keep it in the cat on a clipboard that says, okay, if it's Mark or Matt or Jeff that's driving, that daily, weekly, what have you checklist that says, okay, yep, check the levels and so on, and just initial sign off on it. And it just creates good habits that maintain good operating machine, add life to the machine, and just makes for a happier groomer operator, groomer program as well, right? So it's just an easy thing, little checklist, and then certainly lean on your reps and your dealers for information or any questions you might have. Don't be shy, give us a call. Okay?
If any of this information too, you guys would like to, I'd be happy to get the information to the dealers or from myself, to share further as well. Is there any questions? Listen.
When you mentioned about the track adjustments, right, exactly on the measuring it through, you said it was, I think, 5/8 for a 175 and 3/4 for a 200. What was a 175 and what's the 200?
So the track length, 200-inch, full length. So the machine you're looking at right that's behind us is a 200-inch long track. We consider it's what we call a long track. And then a 175-inch is a short track. Well, actually, we used to have a 150, but we don't produce that now. So the long track
175 is on the.
is on the little 1000 there. Yeah. So those are basically our main two tracks that we produce today. We still do a handful of steel track machines, or what we call Sno-Cats, the grouser and belts. But the majority of customers like the Terra rubber track for most applications.
This is for the rubber track,
This is for the rubber track.
about the cleated track.
And then the cleated track, go with a half-inch sag. Well, depending on there's some different, you have some variables there, but we set those out of the shop. They went with a half-inch sag. And then in the field, I've seen customers run them as loose as 2 and 3 inches. If you've got ice build up and ice, you're going to have to reduce the tension on those. Obviously, too loose, you're going to have a track skip issue or opposite. That adjustment may vary a little bit, but around a 1-inch sag, if you've got a 1-inch sag, you're in good shape. Too much tension, you're going to cause belt failure and hinge wear and bent spindles. Yeah.
Where's that capacitor switch you guys put in for the battery?
On the, I can see this one, see the bolt pattern underneath the 2000. There's a small bolt pattern on the under panel of the engine compartment, right where he's standing. Yeah, but it's on the inside. It's on the inside right there. So
Cool.
Yeah, that makes it nice. It's a nice.
They were up on the firewall.
Yeah, we moved them onto the inside right next to the battery, so it's kind of easy to get to real fast.
That was a bad idea. I like the better firewall. The door locks were frozen. Oh, you could beat your name open.
Yeah. Well, thank you, folks, for your attendance.
Thank you.
Yeah.